Hello and welcome. My name is Mary-Grace Fahrun, also known as Rue of Rue's Kitchen. And in this video, I'm going to read from my book, Italian Folk Magic, Rue's Kitchen Witchery, published by Wiser Books. The reason I'm reading from my book today, actually I'll be reading the introduction, and the introduction is the reason I wrote this book, and I hope that by me reading the introduction of why I wrote this book, it will inspire you, especially if you've tuned in because you know me in my practice of Italian folk magic, or you know my website. I'm hoping that by sharing with you, by reading the introduction to my book, that it'll spark an idea for you, for your practice. And maybe you'll write a book, and that would be great. So, introduction. But there's a story behind everything. How a picture got on a wall. How a scar got on your face. Sometimes the stories are simple, and sometimes they are hard and heartbreaking. But behind all your stories is always your mother's story, because hers is where yours begin. That's from For One More Day by Mitch Albom. On to my introduction. People say necessity is the mother of invention, and I couldn't agree more. It was the summer of 1998. My father had been diagnosed with brain cancer at the young age of 65. The matriarchs in my family were growing older and frailer by the minute. I was preparing to move from Montreal to Toronto because I had received a job offer there. I was at a personal crossroads, and the job market in Montreal was bleak, even for a registered nurse. I needed to take something with me, more than just my personal belongings. I needed to take something of my roots. I began to ask for recipes. I purchased a beautiful hardcover journal at my favorite dollar store. So here it, oops, it's upside down, sorry. Here it is. This is what it looks like. I would learn years later that the beautiful cover was a print of Dante Gabriele Rossetti's A Sea Spell from 1877. I had no idea at the time where this recipe journal would take me. I began by asking my mom, my aunts, my godmothers, my friends' moms, aunts, grandmothers, godmothers, etc. As recipes poured in, so did their stories. Visits and phone calls went longer and longer. Over endless cups of black Italian coffee and all kinds of homemade cookies and cakes, cured meats and cheeses and wine, I wrote it all down. When I didn't have my journal with me, I wrote on the back of envelopes and on paper napkins. What was really interesting were the conversations that would evolve around the recipes. For example, one of my aunts, who was an amazing cook, warned, "But don't make this when you're on your period. It won't turn out." "But why?" I would ask. "Because there's too much power in your hands. It will ruin this delicate dish. During that time of the month, make brodo, broth, or braise tough meats. The power in your hands will toughen tender fillet, but will tenderize the toughest meats." Then her voice dropped to a whisper. "Your other aunt is in menopause. That's why her brush hold is so tough." Now, having been raised by these people, I didn't think anything of their warnings. I was raised immersed in this culture. I was exposed to many regional variations of Italian culture, and because languages come easily to me, I learned the dialects effortlessly. Praying the rosary and burying a statue of St. Joseph in the ground, head down, to sell a house on the same day was as normal could be. So yeah, see, I read ahead. Like I think too fast for the way I'm reading. Sorry about that. Let's try with punctuation, okay? Praying the rosary and burying a statue of St. Joseph in the ground, head down to sell a house on the same day was as normal could be. Like when giving a compliment. We always followed a compliment with sa benedica or si bendet or si pendete di, both meaning God bless, or all three of them meaning God bless. Failing to do so would inadvertently give the receiver of a compliment malocchio, the evil eye. Worse, you would be perceived as doing so on purpose. As I began saying, these same matriarchs weren't getting any younger. It seemed as though overnight they had all become frail, and one by one they began to become ill and die. One evening, after attending a funeral, I happened to glance at my recipe journal on my kitchen table. I opened it up to the page with my recently deceased relative's taralli recipe. I ran my fingertips over her handwriting. It was hard to believe I had just pasted this into my book less than 2 weeks earlier. Remembering our conversation that began with taralli and digressed into spells. Quote, to find a good husband, end quote, made me smile. That is, until I couldn't remember one of the details and absent-mindedly pick up the phone to call her. First, I was bewildered. Then, a deep sorrow washed over me. Just as I was ready to wallow in loss and grief, a new emotion showed its head. Panic. I called one of my aunts and began blurting out, "Who's going to remember all these recipes when everyone is gone? Who will remember the stories and the things we do?" My aunt, then in her 70s, quietly replied, "You." "Me?" "Yeah, you. Don't panic," she said. "Do you have a paper and pen handy? I'll talk, you write." This is the moment Rue's Kitchen was born. The matriarchs of my family and neighborhood came out of the woodwork to help me remember and write things down. Recipes, folk remedies, stories, superstitions, prayers, incantations. Oh my. Sometimes they were complete. Sometimes they were fragments. Most of the time, they were in their regional dialect mixed with French and English. In the summer of 1998, I began posting this information on an internet message board dedicated to Italian Americans. I shared my ever-growing bank of recipes, customs, traditions, folklore, folk magic, superstitions, and so on. Other members shared theirs. At the same time, I started a web page. Literally one page about Italian witchcraft with my email address. Emails began to pour in. My web page quickly evolved into a website as I uploaded more and more information. In July 2000, my website turned 2. That the time had come for me to register my domain, www.rueskitchen.com. I can hardly believe how long ago that feels. For those of you reading this who are not familiar with my website, here is what it says on my homepage. Rue's Kitchen's primary mission is the preservation of customs and practices. Herein you will find traditional Italian from various regions, witchcraft, stregoneria italiana, folk magic, magia operativa, folk medicine, medicina popolare tradizionale, and old-fashioned Roman Catholic folk religion, scongiuri, congiuri, ed incantesimi, practiced by Italians of all faiths all over the world. You will also find information on customs, traditions, and heirloom recipes. Why Rue's Kitchen? The kitchen, my kitchen, has always been the hub of many charms, rituals, healings, and celebrations. This tradition is very rich, and in it will be found the magical and religious rituals and prayers for the outward expression of one's inner spirituality for every phase and condition of one's life. The practices of witchcraft, folk medicine, blessing rituals, and cooking are inextricably woven into the fabric of Italian culture, no matter where Italians are geographically located. Together, these components are vastly greater and more intangible than the sum of their parts. Thus, from both the practical and cultural standpoint, any effort to divorce one from the other diminishes the tradition as a whole. I am blessed to have learned at the feet of the great matriarchs of my family and community, and it is to them that I dedicate this website and my ongoing devotion to the things we do. The contents of this book are recorded oral history. Its purpose is to document this oral history and provide a roadmap for all spiritual seekers and lovers of tradition. May it guide you in reconnecting with your roots and assist you in forging a tradition and legacy of your own. Sa benedica, Ru. Thank you for tuning in, and I wish you a beautiful day.